All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another jubilant episode of the Red, White, Claire, and Blue Show. I don't even think we have down episodes anymore with your illustrious hosts, myself, Alex Baquero, and Chris Fur Condit, your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. And it sounds like we've got a lot of new listeners. So if you are a new listener, if you found us on YouTube, please check all the logos below our heads. We are in all of these places. So please go follow, like, rate, review, and subscribe for all the lukewarm takes, but also for all the rage bait that Fur over here keeps throwing out on the old Twitter machine.
What do you mean?
You know exactly what you're doing, Chris. You know exactly what you're doing with everything that you're throwing out there, but it's okay because it's bringing in new Villa fans, and actually we'll get to it at the end. It brought in one Arsenal fan as well, believe it or not.
You're welcome.
So Chris, first off, before we get into another excellent recap that we're going to run through, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. You know, we're here to talk about the big game over the weekend where an underdog overtook the longtime power, and of course, I'm talking about John Carroll University football defeating Mount Union in the third round of the NCAA playoffs in Division III, and now we're going to talk about the mighty Blue Streaks, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the James Madison Dukes getting into the college football playoff. Shout out Sean Franz.
I did see that as well. Yeah, but no, I'm going.
Tulane Mean Green is Tulane. No,
they are the Green Wave. They're the Green
Wave. Yeah. That's right. Tulane Green Wave getting in there as well. Yeah.
Fun fact about me: I can nail just about. I can get every single Division I FBS nickname, college nickname. I can get a good amount of the 1AAs. I can get a decent amount of Division II and III as well. I'm solid on nicknames.
I actually kind of believe that fits with your overall vibe, Fur.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing it until it becomes a thing.
You're gonna get me on some weird list by calling me that.
I mean, honestly, after our Young Boys podcast, we're probably both on some list somewhere.
Yeah. But no, I'm doing great. Obviously a fantastic weekend from a Villa perspective. We had a great time here with my family outside of that, and we're still just getting ready for the Christmas season. So it's all good things right now. And it's hard to not be flying high coming off of a performance like that on Saturday.
Yeah, it was a juicy game, but first I want to know, Chris, was Pamela Anderson as juicy as she looked in that picture you sent me?
Yes. So I smoked ham today, which is one of my favorite things to do on a charcoal grill. I double smoke a ham, and I've done it, probably for 4 or 5 years now, and I've got it down to a science. And yes, Pamela Anderson was juicy. She was fantastic, and she's gonna make great sandwiches and a nice stew this week. I promise you.
All right. Well, from the juicy buns of Pamela Anderson to the juicy buns of John McGinn, let's get into this game, Chris.
You set me up.
I did. Chris, let's talk about the lineup first, because we missed on a couple positions, and I think one of them I actually meant to call out, but because we were going vibes pod, I forgot about it. The other one I did not, but I think it was a pretty astute tactical move. So first of which, want to talk about Ian Maatsen. And I was actually thinking this going into the game, that when we have played particularly pacey or tricky wingers, Luca Dean has seemed to struggle with them, and we've wound up making early switches to Ian Maatsen just because he has the pace to keep up with them. And I think knowing Bukayo Saka being the talent that he is, probably should have seen this one coming, the move to Ian Maatsen. I think we went with Luca Dean because obviously Ian played in the midweek, and Unai does seem to be rotating his left backs. But honestly, after the midweek performance, I'm not surprised that he got another start and handled himself pretty well with Bukayo Saka.
Oh, I thought he did very well. And I thought they'd go with Dean, in part because like we said, that they went with Maatsen in the midweek. But I also I didn't anticipate, like Unai Emery did, that Arsenal would be as compact as they were to start. And in that setting, I think it makes some sense to bring your more attacking winger or wing back, I should say, out there. So I like the move to go to Maatsen in that spot, and you can always bring Dean on in later moments for defensive cover if necessary.
Yeah, and again, looking at that back line, obviously Arsenal want to protect them a little bit. Ben White, I think going 90 minutes for only like the second time in quite a while. So the attacking threat of Ian Maatsen and his ability to get in behind probably gives Ben White a little bit more to think about, makes Saka need to work a little bit more defensively. So it certainly does a little bit more to put Arsenal on the back foot. I think jump ahead to a cold water. I've seen a couple I'll call them musings, not outright calls, but musings for maybe this to be a changing of the guard of who our first choice left back is. I'm going to pour cold water on that and say that Unai is still going to be very matchup dependent because we have two very, very capable left backs. I don't think that Ian Maatsen all of a sudden is going to be the default name on the team sheet, regardless of opposition. The other one, though, Chris, Youri Tielemans moving to the 10 spot.
I was surprised.
I'm making a decision to pack the midfield a little bit more and provide a little bit more structure, and then be able to get both Kamara and Onana in there.
I was surprised, but in retrospect and the way it played out made a lot of sense. Tielemans has played well in that number 10 role when he's been put there, and putting your three, what really are your three best central midfielders together makes sense in a lot of situations, particularly against a team like Arsenal that have so much skill in the midfield as well. So I think that the idea there to be able to control the ball through the midfield and to be able to have your best players from a defensive standpoint in Kamara and Onana in the midfield, as well as your best passer in the midfield in Tielemans, it makes logical sense. It's not something I think you can do every single game, but I think in certain matchups it will work and work very well in the game on Saturday, in my opinion.
No, I think a lot of times it's going to make us way too congested in the midfield. You've got a lot of guys, throw John McGinn in there as well. You've got four guys that kind of struggle for pace, right? And everybody is going to want to drift towards the middle in that one. So I think it works in a game where you're expecting to concede most of the ball the way Villa did. I mean, I think Arsenal had 55-60% possession for most of the game until maybe the last 15 minutes when Villa kind of turned it on a little bit. And so what that allowed you to do is really safeguard the middle of the pitch. Eze wants to cut inside. Saka wants to cut inside. So you create a little bit more of a clog there. Youri Tielemans, underrated defensively, right? Wins a bunch of ground duels, can challenge it and actually turn the ball the other way. And then you have a more incisive passer further up the pitch who can see some different kind of through balls, different balls over the top. And, Yuri's passing has not been perfect since he's come back from injury. Of course not. He was out for multiple months. But at least the fact that he's attempting and has that range of passing, I think keeps the other team honest. Obviously, knowing that their backline is as kind of janky as it was, you have an opportunity to exploit some of that. So I do think that it wound up being a pretty astute move from Unai Emery. So, Chris, you were the one who wanted to talk about this. So I'm going to kind of take a step back and just say you wanted to spend some time on the tactical battle and how Unai really got the upper hand on Mikel Arteta pretty early on.
Yeah, so I think that what you need to credit Unai Emery for in this game was that he realized what Arsenal were going to try to do early on. And we can talk about it as a credit for Emery and maybe as a fault of Arteta's at the same time, because Emery had him played from jump, how this was going to go. And he knew that Arteta was going to come out and sit deep and be hyper conservative, because this is what Arteta does in many matches, but especially in big matches. He's so afraid of conceding a goal that his teams just sit in a low block. And the text I sent you, Alex, was if Villa were 13th instead of 3rd, there's no way that Arteta comes out and sits in a low block, but he did for the first 15 minutes or 20 minutes of that game. And what Emery did was force them to come out, because he essentially let his back four and Martinez hold the ball until Arsenal came forward and at least put pressure on them to come out some, so they could create space behind. And I thought that was an interesting tactical move, because there's always this thought with teams playing a low block that, well, you've got to break them down. And in this spot, Emery and Aston Villa essentially said, all right, we won't break it down. We'll just hang on to the ball in our own third until you come and get it. And that's what happened for the first 15 minutes. And you saw Arsenal make the tactical change around the 20, 25-minute mark to come forward a little more and start actually trying to press forward and gain possession earlier and move more players into attacking positions, because at first they played so far back that I think it was AFTV, Arsenal Fan TV, that were sitting there saying, why are we playing so low? And that's just a function of who their manager is at the moment. And I'm not trying to talk bad about him, but in big games, he shrinks. Like his lineup, his team compacts, and he is so afraid of conceding a goal that Emery forced him to come out and eventually concede a goal. I thought it was such a great tactical move by Emery and deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, listen, you're right. This is what Arteta does in big games. He plays conservative. He plays for draws. You kind of understand the thinking, I think, logically speaking, of, listen, if I tie all my big games and win all the rest, I'll have a decent chance of being on top at the end of the year. The problem is, I do wonder psychologically how that impacts his team.
Yes.
In the long term, maybe not necessarily feeling like they are trusted or up to these big games. I think that's a debate for another day.
Sure.
Because it makes sense additionally in this respect when you think about how mixed up their back line was from where they typically are and how far down they were in their center backs. You think, let's use our defensive midfielders, Zubimendi, Rice, whoever, let's stay compact, let's protect our back line, and then look at who we've got in front of them in Eze, in Saka, in Odegaard, in Marino. If we can just spring them, get them running at their backline counter quickly, we can get one and then we can shut up shop, because Arsenal are fantastic defensively. And you're right. It was smart of Unai Emery to be a little bit more patient and try to pull them out, rather than, I think, this is a wrinkle from what Villa have done for a large majority of this season, which is take that initiative and just try to break a team down basically by swinging it around back line and not really getting anywhere with it. So a little bit different of an attempt to pull the team out, which is good to see Villa evolve and change how they play teams like this. But it also is a testament to the fact that the first goal was so crucial, right? If Arsenal score that first goal, it's potentially game over, right? Like Villa's going to have no shot. But the fact that Villa were able to, even before Matty Cash scores, had a number of opportunities. Ollie Watkins scuffs a couple. Matt Cash has the one that's blocked at the last moment. That's probably flying top bins if he doesn't. I think that, as much as the tactic of holding the ball back, showing that Villa had the attacking impetus, had the firepower, I think is another reason why Arteta wanted to come out a little bit, because he probably realized, crap, we probably can't keep them at 0-0 for a majority of this game and win this 1-0. God, Villa creating opportunities. What was it? A 2.5 XG by the end of that one?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
What team is this? Is that like double what we've gotten in every game for the rest of the season so far?
Sustainable FC is what that was. But no, so as an overarching theme, even though we haven't gotten there yet, like the one thing I'll say is I was texting with actually the CEO of our company, but a buddy of mine, of my company, who's a Liverpool fan who was watching. And when it was still 1-1, and I think in like the 86th or 87th minute, I texted him. I said, look, no matter what happens here, I'm pleased with the way Villa have played, because they showed in that game that they can hang with what has been the best team in the league so far this season, and deservedly so. Like I said, and like you said on the preview, Arsenal have been the best team in the league by a good stretch since the season began, and I don't necessarily think that the head loss on Twitter, even though I was happy to contribute to it via my, shit talking. Pardon my language. I'll mute that out in the pod. But I don't think this necessarily means they'll lose the. You can't win the league now, and you can't lose the league now.
Sure.
It's just. I am more. It says more, I think, about Aston Villa than it does about Arsenal in this game. And
sure,
Villa were up to the test, and Arsenal faced a really, really good side at home and just weren't quite good enough. That's that's the overarching idea for me.
I mean, listen, Villa. You want to talk about another great tactical move by Emery? Recognizing the inexperience and the lack of cohesion in the back line, you saw how many times Villa pretty directly just went over the top and kind of told those center backs, like, figure it out, went through, but we're really trying to get in behind those guys. And almost every single time it led to an opportunity, right? Crosses, block crosses, shots, missed shots, whatever it was.
Sure. Yeah.
It was honestly fairly basic route one stuff. We were talking in the pre-match about how Villa's best opportunity was going to be to get the 10 on the half turn and springing balls in behind. They didn't even need to do that. It was balls from Matty Cash, from Pau Torres, whatever, just kind of lofting it over for Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers to go run down. And, I think he realized we can be secure defensively. Again, we can put those three guys in the middle, and we can take advantage of their inexperience and just go over the top and kind of do what we do best: play quickly, play direct.
Yeah.
We talk about how much possession Villa has, but when Villa look their best, they play much more quickly through the lines. And they really were able to do that because of, again, the tactics that you were highlighting earlier.
And it helps that Cash and Pau found those passes, played really well. It helps that Morgan Rogers has really found his form for the last 3 or 4 games now and continues to play well. Like, all those things help. So it's more of a rounding into form that we expected. Mm-hmm. Again, there may be a regression to the mean of some players, like you talked about in the last pod, where some players may not play quite as well as we've been seeing. But, like, you don't expect Morgan Rogers to be as bad as he was for the first 8 games, and Ollie Watkins had his opportunities in this game and maybe should have made a little more of them. I don't know. We will talk about that. I know, because it's on our, we're not doing vibes today. We're doing an actual rundown. But the big thing to me was big chances were created. I think the final number was 5 big chances created by Aston Villa against the best defense in the league, at least by numbers. And by the way they played so far this season.
I was going to say, by the eye test too, absolutely the best defense.
Cobbled together or not on the back line, that back, I put it out on Twitter, that back line cost them £170 million. All right. So it's not like they're just garbage. Any Premier League team would take that back line. All right. Now, you can talk about whether or not the cohesion of playing together affects how well they play and all that. But, like, it's not like those are just, young players that haven't played before. That is a very expensive back line that got thrown into a situation against a good side in a ground where that side doesn't concede a lot or doesn't lose much. So there is that whole aspect to it. But, like, I want to get past this idea that Arsenal is so banged up that that's why Villa won, because I'll take their substitutes. You know, if they want to trade Victor Lindelof and who was the young guy we had that we had on the benches? It doesn't matter, but like I will trade you, your subs for ours at center back if you want to do that.
Fair points all around. Chris, I want to also give you a platform as we continue the Matty Cash apology tour. Unbelievable finish. Great cross by Pau. By the way, we're going to also come along to the Pau apology tour a little bit later on. Not for us, but for a lot of Villa fans out there. But we'll start with Matty Cash. Great cross by Pau. Lucky flick by Timber. But what a finish by Matty Cash. First time. Hard at the ground, right in between Rye's legs, going 5-hole. Chris, since 2020-21, only 2 defenders have scored and assisted 10-plus goals in the Premier League, 10 each. So 10 scored, 10 assists. Trent and Matty Cash. I cede the floor to you, my Polish brother.
So I've been on the Matty Cash train for a very long time and have said for a long time that the stick he gets from our fans is unnecessary and uncalled for. Does he make the occasional defensive mistake? Sure. But is it that regular? It is not. And he is such a great player going forward for Aston Villa. And more than anything, I think you need to talk about the fact, or not you, I'm sorry, Alex, but everyone needs to talk about the fact that he buys in to the Unai Emery system more than maybe any other player outside of John McGinn. He does everything that is asked of him, and he has become such a complete player under Emery. He's an attacking threat. He's a very good defender, despite what Twitter may have you believe. He's not the best right back in the league, but I wouldn't trade him for more than a handful of players, right? And even those, you have to consider what he does in attack before you make that swap. So I think it's time to not have Matty Cash as a whipping boy anymore. Villarati, you and I have sort of come together this weekend because I've been a little more active on Twitter. So Villa fans on Twitter, stop talking badly about Matty Cash. Love him, appreciate him, have a kielbasa, have a pierogi, have a Tinsky, and let's go.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Villarati have come around to Matty Cash over probably the last handful of games leading into the season. I think you and I kind of said, look, can we upgrade it right back? Sure. But it's not this position of dire need where he's championship quality the way that some people made it out to be. To your point, he's now indispensable. I mean, like you said, there are very few other right backs in the league that I would prefer to have. And that is a testament to how he's gotten, honestly, year over year, so much better under Unai Emery. Someone who could not play across to save his life is now taking our corners on one side and pinging them in off his left boot with the other. So, the steady improvement, to your point, testament to his buying in. I mean, yeah, everybody that said that he was championship quality and he needed to be shipped out. Some in our own Raleigh Villains group chat, by the way, we're looking at you guys too. We are demanding apologies from you, bringing back that segment. Demanding apologies.
Yes.
Who crapped on Matty Cash. And so actually, Chris, I'm going to pull it up now since we're just going to continue doing demanding of apologies. Everybody who said Pau Torres was a crap defender, by the way, we stood by him through every single minute. I'm looking at multiple British members, again, of our group chat who said he was too soft. Spaniard couldn't play. You want to know how long it's been since Villa lost a game that Pau Torres started at center back? 1 year, 3 months, 12 days. That's 15 total games, 11 wins. They've won 7 in a row, conceding just 2. And by the way, this isn't to denigrate him, but everybody who was like, oh, unless Tyrone Mings defends, Villa can't keep a clean sheet. Pau Torres can only play attacking style. Come on. Watch the way we played. Watch the way we've been organized. Watch the headers that he's won, the way he's put his body on the line for stuff. Again, it is a good thing, as you have said repeatedly, to have two very good quality left center backs. It doesn't need to be a bad thing. So again, not to denigrate Tyrone Mings, but God damn it, put some respect on Pau Torres' name for the job he's done defensively.
The left side of Villa's defense, if everybody's healthy, is probably one of the best in the Premier League. You know, if you talk about Luka Dean and Ian Maatson and Tyrone Mings and Pau Torres, that like you just have so much strength there, and flexibility in terms of what they can do. But Pau Torres is Unai Emery's ideal center back, left center back in particular, because of the way the ball comes out from goal. But you'll always see, I think, Emery prefer a player like him because of the way he plays attacking football. That is 100% true. He is an attacking center back as much as there can be one, and Emery and that's what Emery wants. Pardon me. But again, it's a good thing to have two very good players. But Pau Torres, I mean, in that game on Saturday, he really shone through the quality player he is, the quality defender he is. What he was being asked to do between him and Emi Martinez in the early going in terms of holding the ball, like we talked about. I mean, they were literally being asked to hold the ball until Arsenal defenders were on top of them because space was trying to be created behind. And the amount of trust between those two players in particular, because they're the ones driving everything when we hold deep like that, it's immense, and it's a testament to the two of them. But since we're talking about Torres specifically, it's a testament to him that Emery has that much faith in him to hold the ball 5, 6, 8 yards from his own goal against a team like Arsenal and wait until an opponent is bearing down on you to release it. Either most of the time it was down the left channel, but left or center, just to hold the ball that long and have the composure to be able to do that and not turn the ball over in a bad spot. All credit to him.
Yeah. All right. Done with demanding of apologies. Let's get back to the game. Second half, credit to him. Arsenal came out much more aggressive. Were really showing their quality for a good, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes there. And pretty quickly take advantage of a fumble. A player who I love, Leandro Trossard, takes advantage, ties the match. And I would say in the 55th, thereabouts, 53rd. So it was pretty quick.
Yep.
Credit to Villa. They didn't crumble, but they certainly were under significant pressure, I think, for the next kind of 20 minutes or so until Unai Emery felt like it was time to make changes. So Chris, what were you watching in that period of Arsenal dominance?
Well, I think when I was watching it live, my only thought was eventually something like this would happen. Maybe not necessarily conceding the goal like that, but Arsenal are where they are and where they've been for the last 5 seasons under Arteta for a reason. You know, even though we and I specifically make fun of them a lot for always finishing second, that's still extremely good. You know, and so they're always in that conversation, right, of being near the top of the league, and there's a reason for it. They have a quality team, and they have very good players at every position on the pitch. So I think that, and Arteta, as much as I make fun of him as well, is a very good manager. You know, he's very good. So I think that it was a great job by Arteta to make those changes at half. To be more aggressive. I was kind of surprised that he made those two changes at halftime because it's just not typical of what he does. But I think he also saw that he needed to inject something into his team, and it worked. It worked to his credit. So I think that from a Villa perspective, what we need to focus on is that they didn't crumble after that first goal. And they remained resilient. And in the last 15 minutes, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but in the last 15 minutes, Villa were the aggressor, which is something that we are not accustomed to as Villa fans in the last, 15 years, like since the days of Ashley Young the first time around, right? I will credit Arsenal and Arteta for the way they responded in the second half and the changes made to be more attacking and more aggressive, because it worked and it was effective. But on the other side, you also have to say Villa did a nice job of remaining resilient. Emery eventually made changes to counteract that, and Villa deserved the result at the end.
Yeah, so I want to talk about a couple things with respect to this. The first of which is, yes, Villa were under pressure, but I'm still going to say that over the majority of the game, Villa had, and I mean, I guess this bears out in the XG as well, much better chances to actually score for all of Arsenal's possessional dominance and shots. If you look at the final tally of shots at this point in the game, I can't say that a ton really felt all that dangerous. Villa did a great job of holding up a little bit, not letting them necessarily get to the byline and create cutbacks.
Yep.
And the things that Arsenal are good at, corners and free kicks, in and around the box, Villa were able to minimize those. So they were able to minimize the ways that Arsenal is strongest, or their best opportunities to create goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was almost a bit of the opposite of what we typically see with Villa. A lot of possessional dominance, a lot of feeling like they should be able to break through, but nothing that is particularly incisive. And again, I think we're going to go back to the three midfielders that Unai Emery put in there. Who did Trossard come on for? I believe it was Eberechi Eze, who we highlighted in the outset as one of the biggest threats that Villa were going to face. Later on, he had to pull off Saka to bring on Martinelli. And I think it was because the way Villa set up in that 4-2-3-1, that really kind of became more of like a 4-3-3. Those guys were kept wide outside, not able to cut in to where they could be the most dangerous. So, you minimize those crippling mistakes, you defend those creative players really well, and that is how Villa ultimately were able to weather those 20, 30 minutes, to the point that, like you said, they kind of reserved a little energy, and then were able to bring on the Buendias, the Malin, the et cetera, to, as I said in the preview, kind of run at a tired, more haggard defense. And yeah, last 15, 20 minutes, it did feel like if anyone was going to find a breakthrough, it was going to be Aston Villa. And so, Chris, talk about that last scramble that led to yet another goal involvement for my man Emi Buendia.
It was nuts. And like I was here in my house. I'm like 30 feet from the TV right now, or 50 feet from the TV right now, and I was jumping and screaming, and my dogs were barking. My kids were wondering if Dad was having a stroke, or something, because it was crazy. But I do want to say one thing before I get to that, and that is that Emery's changes near the end were to bring on attackers to try and win the game, and not to bring on defensive players to shore up defense and hold for a draw, which is very much in line with his personality that we've talked about before, but much more so now. We can see, I think, to some extent, the project, the goal of the project coming to fruition in the quality of players that we have going forward, right? So the fact that he has a Malin, a Sancho who played well in the time that he came on, and a Buendia to bring on to beat the number one team in the league at the time, or try to beat the number one team in the league. That's always been where Villa want to get to, and where Villa are continuing to work to get to. So I want to credit Emery to some extent, because that's not a substitution that we've seen from past managers. In most cases, even at Villa Park, managers will play it conservatively and
we're
hold
seeing
forward.
that game out. We're not
Right.
going to win it.
Exactly. So as for the mad scramble, I have a couple of things. I want to credit everybody that was in the box there for Aston Villa for never giving up on the ball at any point. Just constantly trying to press forward and put the ball in the back of the net.
Not getting frantic with it either, by the
exactly.
way. No one reached for a shot and put it over the bar or wide or anything like that. It was a mad scramble, but there was a bit of controlled chaos and attempt by Villa to find the right opportunity.
And they did, right? Yes, 100% correct. Arsenal made a couple of very good defensive plays in there. Maybe could have cleared it at one point or another, but didn't. And I think everybody in there deserves credit. Emi Buendia, my man, nobody deserves it more than him. I think for the injuries he's had with Villa, the spell at Bayern where I'm sorry,
Bayern.
What's that?
Bayern.
Yeah. Sorry. As soon as I said it, I knew I was wrong. But the fact that people were talking about him being transferred out in the summer, and at this point, he's become a super sub at worst, if not a starter. He had a couple of bad games coming into this one, but boy, was he there when we needed him, and he put that thing top shelf, and I can still hear the sound of Villa Park in my ears. I only wish we could have been there for that one, because I know how loud it is there. When you and I were there, it would have to be immeasurable, in terms of how it feels at that point. So it was an incredible moment, and I can only hope that Villa can build on this and continue to push on.
So 2 ads from me. One, Jadon Sancho, much maligned Jadon Sancho, at least on this podcast.
And others.
The ability and others, I know, but I want to say, in giving of apologies, not demanding of apologies, holding onto the ball, he beats 3 guys to take him out of play out on the wing to make an initial cross that is headed away, but that gets recycled around to McGinn. Who was it? No, it wasn't McGinn. McGinn was out by that point. Whoever was on the right-hand side gets another cross in, and Jadon Sancho having the presence of mind to head that back across net into a dangerous area as opposed to trying to go for goal. Brilliant play, brilliant composure. And so, we're looking for little things out of him at this point. And the ability to take on a man from wide, take on 3 men, huge. That's what we're going to need moving forward out of him. So I want to give him plaudits for that. That goal does not happen without those two contributions from him. And then Emi Buendia, not just the final goal, actually, but when the first shot is blocked, he's the one who gets the ball. And again, we're talking about presence of mind, controlled chaos, not grasping at things. Doesn't immediately shoot, actually turns and cycles it back around, maintains the possession to find some other opportunities. Kamara is the one who ultimately kind of keeps it alive and allows him to hit that first time up and into the corner the way he does. But again, that composure, that ingenuity, I want to give both of those guys credit for making that goal happen.
And the only thing I'll add to what you just said is some of that, to some extent, has to be what Emery preaches on the training ground. It's about knowing when to pull the trigger versus just flailing at it. And I think to some points throughout Emery's time at Aston Villa, that's been a point of frustration, in that you get guys that you wonder why they don't shoot. And I think we're hopefully maybe almost seeing this come together the way that we ultimately want it to be, where guys are comfortable taking the shot and know the appropriate time to take it, because we're seeing guys take distance shots. We're seeing guys hold the ball when necessary, and we're seeing guys finally finish.
Well, hopefully they don't listen to the Villa Park crowd too much, because I felt like whenever anyone got the ball within 35 yards of the goal, you could hear such a loud audible shoot ring out from the whole tent. Chris, we hit all of my good points. Do you have any additional ones, or should we hit the one bad point that I think?
I don't know that we said enough about McGinn. That'd be the only other good thing I had. I thought he had another great game.
I talked about his juicy buns to start this whole segment.
You did, and they were a part of it.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point now that he's so consistent and so consistently good, and it's been for a long time. But for him, I think for some reason, maybe it's just my own sensibilities about it or my own ideas, but for him to showcase the way he does against a top side like Arsenal, for him to play as well as he did, as a player that we bought, but you can go down the list, but as a player we bought for like £2.5 million, you can't say enough about that guy as the captain. But him, Kamara, Tielemans, like all guys that those three guys I just named cost us £2.5 million in total, and they bossed the midfield. So a credit to McGinn, a credit to the team, a credit to actually, I think that was Steve Bruce that brought McGinn in.
I think it was.
But we've talked about him, about how important he is to the side in terms of what he brings to the dressing room. But now it's showing more and more on the pitch that you and I said earlier in our preview pod that the best 11 probably doesn't include John McGinn. And I think at this point, if we're being honest, we're wrong about that. And the best 11 has to have John McGinn in it.
I think you're right. Good ad by you. So Chris, let's talk about the one bad point. And this was something that I was certainly concerned about coming out of the Brighton game. I said, before we announce Ollie's back, I want to see a little consistency out of him. He was playing the team that he loves to score against. He scored the second most goals in his entire career against Arsenal. First is Brighton. And you can't say that he didn't have opportunities in this one. He had many opportunities, and not only did he not really do great with them in terms of finishing, there were multiple other times where he could have either created opportunities for himself, created for others, and just seemed to be back to making the wrong decision almost every single time. I don't know, man. I'm worried. Coming off of that Brighton performance, I really thought that this was the time to kick on the team that he loves to play against it, and you see how open he was for a few of these. These were not half chances. Really, really disappointed for him not to exit this game with a goal.
I thought he should have at least had one, if we're being fair. I think you and I are both thinking of the same chance. I think it was in the first half, where
the one where he cuts back, kind of splits the defenders twice and gets it on his left foot. Yeah.
But what I was going to say about that was one where he had almost a little too much time to think about it once he got the ball to his left foot. So I don't know. It would have been great, I guess, obviously, for him to finish and score and get another goal, because it would just build the confidence that he started from the Brighton game. I will take the positive in that he created some very big chances, and I think they'll come. The goals, I should say. I think the goals will come. But I, like you, am disappointed that he didn't get one. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it was such a big result for the club and such a big result in the league that I don't want to be that podcast or those guys that dwell on the negative,
That's fair.
But I do think that you would have liked to see Ollie come away with a goal there. Yeah.
I think it's just something that we need to continue to keep an eye on, because especially as we get close to January, like you've said before, 3 goals, anything sub 10 goals from your main striker is not going to get it done if, as everybody on Villa Twitter wants to announce nowadays, that we're in a title race. If Villa want to be in a title race, you need more than 6 to 8 goals from your main striker. As much as Villa are getting great contributions from everyone else, and you love to see it, you got to get between 10 to 15 from that guy. Yes. So hopefully he turns it on soon. Yes. But you're right. Let's not dwell on that, because the larger implication on the season is that Villa are comfortably in third place, 3 points back of Arsenal as we go into a very, very busy month. Chelsea also stumbled, which means that Villa now have more importantly, I think, than looking up at Arsenal, we'll look down and say Villa now have a 5-point gap on 4th place. Now, the games upcoming are not easy. We've got West Ham, we've got Chelsea in there, we've got a better Manchester United squad, who obviously remains Villa's bogey team before we play Arsenal again. Yep. Meanwhile, Arsenal have a fairly easy run of 4 fixtures. So much easier road as we look ahead to that December 30th matchup. But hey, listen, Villa comfortably in 3rd place at this point in the season. I think we are more than ecstatic with where Villa are sitting, especially, with the wins that they're getting, looking better week in, week out. Once again, you could argue that the 90 minutes against Arsenal were the best 90 minutes that Villa have played all year long. So we talk about regression of the mean a lot. Right now, the regression is going up from the Opta as opposed to down to the Opta expected points table. And that's a lovely thing to see.
Sure. I think that the biggest thing that we need to take away from this is the early part of what you said. Everything seems to be rounding into form. Like the last 2 games that Villa have played in the league, you could argue are some of the best 90 minutes they've played, at least in some phase or another. There are always things we can nitpick and look at that can be improved. But on the whole, we see these incremental improvements. And that's something you and I talked about in the early going when Villa weren't scoring goals and weren't winning a lot, right? We talked about, well, here are small things that we can see that are getting better. Now you see all those things coming together to form a full 90-minute game. And that's a positive. And again, Arsenal are an excellent team. There's no getting around that. They're going to be in the title hunt. Whether or not they win it, we don't know, but they're going to be there. They're going to be in the top 3, probably by the end of the season. And to be able to play the way that Aston Villa did, like I said, the best thing I can say about Saturday is that Villa looked every bit the part in that game. They were the aggressor for most of the game. The moment didn't look too big, and nobody looked out of place in terms of how they were playing. It wasn't a smash and grab like we've seen in the past, and I'd still take one, by the way, if that were to come later in the season. But this was, frankly, it was a really fun game to watch, regardless of the result. I'm glad we turned up on the right side of it, but it was a really good match between 2 very good teams that Villa ended up on the right side of, and deservedly so.
I think that's actually a really good way to put it, and I'll end it here before we move ahead to Thursday. A lot of times we've been seeing some Villa victories where at least I've kind of been like, that wasn't really great to watch. We're coming away with the 3 points, but I'm seeing more negatives than positives. This is one where even had Villa lost, I think you and I would come on here and be like, wow, great game, great performance, unlucky not to get a point or 3 points there. And that is a change from honestly where we've been for a large majority of this season. And I think that's a great indication of where Villa's stock is headed right now. So Chris, where is that stock headed? Well, that stock is headed to Switzerland. We are going to talk about FC Basel in the Europa League on Thursday. Villa, unfortunately, will not play in the Premier League again until next weekend. Chris, Like I just said, in Switzerland Thursday, so far this season, FC Basel, they're actually only 1 point above already dominated Young Boys in the Swiss league. Xherdan Shaqiri is the captain and probably name most familiar to villains for his time at Stoke and Liverpool. But I think it says something that their goalie is their highest rated player on WhoScored.com. Probably says a little something about their defense. In the Europa League so far, 2 wins, 0 draws, 3 losses, 24th place. So just on the cusp right there. And, all I can really add, the Swiss league is tough to scout, as you and I noticed. Very, very, there is a dearth of statistics and information and analysis of these teams. What I can say is that Basel typically play in a 4-2-3-1, maybe a 4-4-1-1, depending on how you want to design the system. They are not on a good run of form. Only 2 wins in their last 9 in all competitions. It seems like they're struggling to create a little bit. So they have a ton of possession, kind of like Villa early in the season. They do build up slowly through the back, from what I can tell. Stay relatively organized positionally, so like not necessarily free flowing, and so I think that's leading to an inability to actually create opportunities. Very rarely do they get above 1.2, 1.5 in expected goals, whether in the Swiss league or out of it. But that being said, this possessional dominance does seem to happen regardless of opponent, regardless of match, and so with them playing at home, we always kind of say in Europa, teams are just going to sit in against Villa and let them try and break them down. I actually do expect Basel, just from what I see, to try and come out and play a little bit. I think that'll be to their detriment. But they just seem very, very, very stuck on this style of theirs.
I think it'd be tough to look at this and say that Villa should not win, right? Like this should be a Villa win. Their keeper, Marvin Hitz, is 38 years old, but played at Dortmund and has some big comps in his repertoire and is playing incredibly well based on the statistics I can see, which is not much. Swiss league, up your game in terms of what you put out there on the English internet, please. The only concern for me, I don't want to sound too conceited or too overconfident, but the concern for me is that Villa look past this one, because Villa are comfortably in a good spot to advance, and I think that the important thing for competitions like this and for any team in this situation is to continue to build on wins, because winning begets winning, and we see it throughout sport, right? When you become complacent and okay with drawing or losing, you become a team that is okay with drawing and losing. Like that's a really silly sentence to say, but having followed the Cleveland Browns for my entire life, I know what it's like when a team is okay with losing, because they, when you're okay with not winning to advance your draft position, you become okay with not winning. So I want to remain focused and keep the pressure on and keep the foot on the pedal as much as possible. You don't want to overstress the players either, but you want them to realize that this isn't just a walk in the park, and you can't just roll the ball out and win. You're going to have to play decent football, good football, and win this game away from home.
Yeah. So honestly, let's talk about what Villa is going to do, because you're right. There is the ability to look past this game. I think, unfortunately, the way you typically don't look past a game is you play your bona fide starters, right? We can't do that right now. We need to rotate. The games are coming way too thick and fast over the next few weeks. So I do expect a decent amount of rotation from Unai Emery, and that probably will be reflected in the scoreline as well. So I do expect Emi Martinez to start. I think we'll see a back line with a little bit of rotation. I might even hazard a guess that we see both Lamar Bogard and Victor Lindelof in the back line to give Matty Cash and
Konsa.
I'll say Konsa a rest. So I think it'll be Bogard, Lindelof, Powell, and I think Ian Maatsen will actually play again.
You think?
And I think we bring Luka Dean back in for the weekend's game against West Ham, but Maatsen seems to be the European left back. So I'll go with the 4 of those.
Do you think Dean gets in as a sub? Like
I do think Dean gets in
75 minutes, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll get a little bit of time to shut up shop when Villa are ahead, knock on wood.
Hopefully.
In the defensive midfield, I think Kamara and Tielemans probably. In front of them, I think we will see Rodgers, Buendia, Sancho, and then Malen up top.
I think you're right about everything. The only thing I think it'll be, you said Kamara and Tielemans, right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Onana and Tielemans instead.
Okay.
But it could be either. But I think everything else is going to be. I think you're right because I think they have to rotate. I think that Gassan is clearly not going to come back until after AFCON, since he wasn't even in the side against Arsenal. So that's out. Sancho needs some minutes, and I think has shown enough, at least in the last game and a little bit in the prior game, a little bit in his spell, that maybe he deserves it, and we need the rotation anyway. I think you could see a change at left back, but we'll see. It could be either. We're blessed in that spot to have 2 very good left backs. I think Bogard makes a lot of sense on the right back, and then Lindelof plays right center back. Obviously, that's the perfect fit. And given that Martinez did not play prior to Arsenal, I think he'll play this game because Emi Martinez likes to play. No matter what anybody says about him, and there's still some chatter online, less so than there was in the early going, but Martinez wants to be out there and plays his best when he plays more games. So I do think that makes a lot of sense from your prediction. So just one change for me.
Yeah, and let's remember Villa are only 2 points off of top 8. Sorry.
Yes.
Get that bye. So if you go to 9th place Genk, Villa are only 2 points up. So a win goes a long way with only 2 matches left, assuming, some other teams kind of in that top 8 might drop one, goes a long way towards really securing that bye, which is incredibly important at this point in the season. So I like I said, I expect Basel to kind of go for it a little bit. I think if we're planning how this is going to go out, I think we will see a surprising start where Basel might have Villa on the back foot a little bit. We saw this with young boys as well, where Villa looked a little nervy at the back, right? They didn't necessarily exert control over the game until we got later into first half, early in the second. I think you could probably see a similar pattern here, especially with the changes that we're predicting. But ultimately, I think we'll get a couple goals, and I think we'll kind of coast out 2-0 winners in this one.
I've got it 2-1, just because I always expect that we're going to concede something, particularly on the road. But yes, I have Villa winning as well.
Awesome. So that's it, Chris. Anything else you want to add? I got a couple YouTube shout outs. That's about it.
I'm good. Thank you for all of those of you who, talked with me on Twitter over the weekend. It was a lot of fun. I enjoy it. Arsenal fans, especially.
Chris loves his Villarati on Twitter. I got a couple YouTube shout outs. So Desmonde6685, thanks for saying you like the pod. Then you were kind of condescending when you announced that you were an Arsenal fan, but we're going to ignore that and just say thanks for joining us. Hopefully you keep listening a little bit when you want to check in advance of the next game. Also shout out to Darren Monroe 6092. Appreciate your support. Anyone else? Slide tackle into the DM, slide tackle into the comments section. As Chris said, we love to engage. We love the interaction, ask us questions, inform future segments, all that kind of stuff. We love the engagement. Chris, that's all we got. I have a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow that I still need to finish packing for. But we will certainly regroup Thursday evening in advance of West Ham and talk about what was hopefully another Villa victory in the Europa League. Chris, until then, my friend, as always, up the Villa.
Up the European Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.